Good evening, everyone. I'm Billy. I'm an alcoholic. So, someone asked a question, which was the first thing I was going to talk about tonight. Recordings. If you need recordings, just send me an email and I will explain it to you. Um, there is a private Facebook group called Monday Night Service Workshop. The recordings are usually posted there by first thing Tuesday morning. Only audio is recorded. All the questions, as you know, are read by me from the chat. So the whole meeting is recorded. So just so everybody knows that, just a reminder, when we get to questions, we do not deal with any conference agenda items at this gathering. It's extremely too close to the General Service Conference to be interfering with the process that is designed in each area to give feedback to your delegate, which is especially important considering the concept we're going to talk tonight. But we don't take any even question that's remotely close to agenda items. So what else do I need to say? Tonight we're talking about, I believe we are on concept 2 tonight. Am I right? Yes, I am right. If you're new to us and you want to catch up, you can send me an email. We'll tell you how to get into that group. And you can listen to the recordings, but you don't need to listen to me to catch up. You could just read yourself in the concepts in the service manual. Sometimes I've had people say it's confusing because I mentioned something and they don't understand it. So I just want to explain that. There are actually 2 books with the concepts in it. I have my old red book here, but this is not a service manual. This is actually item BM 32, which is just the concepts. You can buy a book that is just the concepts. Or you can get the service manual. I tend to like this book because when the service manual changes, the concepts will stay the same. The only thing I would say if you do buy the concepts book is the traditions are not in there, not even listed 1 to 12, short form or long form. And the conference charter is not in there, which makes it difficult to really understand the concepts without reading the conference charter. But I just wanted to explain that. But trying to make up time, please get a service manual. I'm going to repeat what I said one time. Please email me if you need directions how to get a hold of the recordings. The email is in the chat. If you're going to catch up, read the Traditions Illustrated, the Concepts Illustrated. And for the traditions, please read the section in AA Comes of Age that deals with all the traditions. It goes very clearly 1 through 12, starting in like page 80 something, 90 something. That chapter is not called the traditions, but they are in there. Let's start with tradition 2. We'll start with one of our favorite questions about tradition 2. The long form of tradition 2 is for our group purpose. There is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as may express himself in our group conscience. First question we get is, why is the short form longer? Because it adds some wording. Hold on one second while I put my email again in here for someone who's signed in right at the start of the meeting, so they didn't see it. But it's a valid question. Why is the short form longer? Why is there that extra wording at the end? Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. The best research done on this topic was by Frank M., a past archivist who's now passed away of the General Service Office. I knew Frank. He was okay. Well, I'll finish and then get to another thought. Frank did a lot of research on this. And I'm going to explain why the old timers did not like this tradition. But for the rest of AA, they were afraid of, believe it or not, alcoholics who have a little bit too much fun with power and authority, or like it a little bit too much, or the old alcoholic ego. And so they added that line to like take fear away from the fellowship, that there was going to be some governing body that was going to tell everybody what to do in AA. And so that's why they added that line, our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. Now, what I forgot to say, and I apologize because I wrote myself like 6 notes today to talk about this, and I forgot it. So I just need to pull up an email. Just stay with me 1 second. I just need to pull up an email that I received today, which caused me to take about a 20-minute break from work because it was not good news, but yet it was good news. I just need to find it and who from the General Service Office sent it. Okay. Passing of trusted servant Jim Estelle, trustee emeritus. I use his last name because he was a Class A trustee who then went on to serve as the chair of the board. It says we recently received the sad news that trustee emeritus W.J. Jim Estelle passed away on February 13th, 2025. Attached, please find a brief description of his legacy of service to AA and a link to information regarding his memorial service. And inside his obituary, I'm just going to read a little of it to you. Jim actually, a family of people who worked in corrections. He actually lived in the housing for corrections officers at San Quentin at one time when he was a boy. Jim went on to work in the California Department of Corrections and then to Montana Department of Corrections and then to the Texas Department of Corrections, where he was the director of all prisons and corrections in Texas. Jim was probably one of the most pro Alcoholics Anonymous wardens and director of prisons in all of America. When people sometimes ask why was Texas so far ahead of the rest of the country regarding active Alcoholics Anonymous meetings in correctional facilities, that goes directly to Jim Estelle. Jim was a cowboy's cowboy. He always wore his cowboy boots. He always wore his belt with his buckle. He always had his watch on that had whatever that blue stone is. I'm forgetting what it's even called. Jim was about 6'3" or 4". Jim always wore a cowboy hat. And Jim sacrificed more of his life for Alcoholics Anonymous than probably many members, including myself. Turquoise, thank you, somebody who said that. I want to share something that Jim shared with me for anybody who may be new to service or new to a service position. So you could be brand new GSR. You could be somebody who just took a new position, but I want to share something with you. After I was a delegate, my first position below the conference level at GSO was serving as an appointee member on the trustee conference committee. I went to my first board weekend, the July board weekend, after I was selected. I remember like saying to myself that I'm going to pretend like I have Scotch tape over my mouth. I'm just going to observe and watch and mind my own business. And I did an excellent job of it believe me, I'm talking about myself. So I'm being honest. Like I was quiet as could be. And the corrections committee met in the morning at that time during board weekend. all the trustees and directors all eat in the same room and get lunch. And Jim sat down right next to me. And I had known Jim since I was a delegate and before I was a delegate. And we talked conversationally for a little bit. And then he said to me, and he looked right at me, he said, "What was that in the meeting? What happened?" And I said, "What part are you talking about?" He said, "The part where you said nothing." I said, "Oh, so you know, Jim, I don't have a problem sharing my opinion. So I just decided that I would come here and I would just like take a good look around and take it all in and not come out like right away." And he said, "Do you know how much AA paid for you to be here this weekend?" He said, "Do you know how much money came out of the basket to get you pay your travel? Do you know how much money came out of the basket to pay for your 2 hotel rooms this weekend? Do you know how much money came out of the basket for you to eat here this weekend?" He said, "If your plan is to waste AA's money, maybe you should think about not coming back." He said, "We don't waste our money in Alcoholics Anonymous, and we don't pick people or elect people to serve in positions so that they can just come and be a wallflower and stand up against the wall and not participate." He's like, "Anybody who's been selected for an AA position, from a GSR at their home group to you here today, somebody trusted that you were going to do your best to carry out AA's group conscience." He's like, "And you can't do that without participating." And I have never forgotten that lesson that Jim taught me, and I am forever, forever grateful. Um, he was a giant among giants. I cannot say that enough, that he was a giant among giants. So I wanted to give a big shout out to his family, thank them for the sacrifice that they made. You talk about a man that served 9 years as a Class A, okay? That right there is 27 board weekends, okay? 9 1 week general service conferences. Then came back as a chair. So 12 more board weekends and 4 more general service conferences. Then came back as a trustee emeritus and just never like interfered or tried to control, but shared history when it was needed. So when I add that all up and I think about the time and the debt that we probably have to his family, I just wanted to mention him tonight. So with that, I'll go back to tradition 2. So let's talk about why tradition 2 was not really liked by old timers. It's not like they liked the traditions to begin with, but particularly this tradition put a bad taste in the mouth of many old timers. I was recently in Pennsylvania this weekend, which made me think of, some of you may be aware of a treatment facility that originally was, well, you probably know it as the Karen Foundation, but originally it was called Chit Chat. It was like one of the first treatment centers out there when there weren't a lot of them. Dick, uh, his last name was C, started that, which has nothing to do with AA. I'm just trying to tell you how much of a giant he was in the alcoholism kind of community. If you've ever heard of a conference called Cook's Forest, which claims to be the oldest conference in all of Alcoholics Anonymous, which might be true. I hate to say it is, because in AA, whenever you use words like first or founder, they're kind of dangerous to use because we don't keep the best history. We try to. But Cook Forest was started for the delegate from Pennsylvania to give their report. That's how Cook Forest started in 1951 after the first General Service Conference. And Cook's Forest is still today, twice a year, the weekend before Memorial Day and the weekend after Labor Day. And the reason I mention him is because I've read a couple of letters from Dick to Bill W. in the late 40s, and he was not happy about any of this going on. He didn't like the idea of the traditions. He didn't like the idea of a general service conference. He thought we were giving too much authority to all these newcomers who were going to come into AA and destroy it before they got good society. And that's what the old timers were afraid of. You have to understand, I'm on my phone tonight because I'm traveling, so I have it set up on my desk in my hotel room, not my iPad. I can see some of the people that are in here. I can't see as many as I usually see. But I can see some of the people, and I can tell you that AA in the 40s, like the early 40s, was made up for like our kind of personality. If you had 5 or 6 years in 1944, that was like having 50 years today. You were an old timer. You got to make all the AA rules. You got to decide what nights the meeting met, where they met, whose house or what church. You got to decide who actually got to come to the meeting. You got to decide if before Al-Anon you had a gathering for family members and spouses before the meeting. You made all the decisions for AA in your little part of the world. So imagine how it went over when all of a sudden every AA member's vote was equal. That did not go over too well. Now, I want to give a big plug for the AA group pamphlet, which sometimes I call the owner's manual of Alcoholics Anonymous. The AA group pamphlet, it's kind of like when you buy a car, and rather than read the instruction manual that's usually in like a nice folded like Velcro thing, like in the wheel well or the glove compartment, that you never read because you'll just guess how it works. But that's what the AA group pamphlet is. It's really the owner's manual of Alcoholics Anonymous. And inside that group pamphlet is the answer to lots of questions. But regarding this tradition, one of the most important, I want to remind somebody to please. I just got an alert from one of our watchers. If you are on camera and you have a phone up inside the screen, you are in jeopardy of being removed. I'm just letting you know because we take anonymity seriously here. So that's just a gentle warning. I've instructed the person not to remove anyone because we didn't give that warning officially yet tonight. But inside the AA group pamphlet, there is a section on what is a group conscience. And one of the most important things it talks about is being informed and taking your time and having lots of discussion. And on important matters, not rushing things, just taking the time and letting everybody get their 2 cents out. Now, that doesn't mean letting someone control the room or dominate the room. Sometimes people ask me what in their district or their area or their group, they complain about one person who's always talking. And I'm like, well, you could use the same principles that the General Service Conference uses. That when you discuss one issue, no one gets to talk twice until everyone who hasn't talked once and wants to gets to talk first. But you got to make that part of your script. You got to let people know ahead of time. And the old AA adage of, we want to hear everything, we just don't want to hear it from everybody. Like if what's been said already is what you were going to say, perhaps you don't need to say it. But this is how we've kept AA in the middle of the road to make sure that personalities don't dominate, to make sure that groups make informed decisions. And believe me, if you're really new to AA, or like you're new but like in the fascination stage, If I hate to wreck it for you, if you think you have landed in the land and island of spiritual giants, I just want to let you know that you might be a little disappointed from time to time. You might be disappointed in some behavior that you witness. It could even be for me. You might be disappointed. Um, but we have this, and what's great about it is it's self-correcting. Our group conscience today might not be our group conscience tomorrow. Now, let me put a little AA myth to the side there regarding the General Service Conference and the second tradition. There is a common quote that people repeat that no conference action is binding upon another. That is technically true. However, it doesn't mean that once the General Service Conference is over, you don't have to believe that's our group conscience. That's our group conscience until the conference votes differently, 2/3 to go the other way. Like, we have a plain language big book. You don't get to show up and say, well, it's not binding because, that was 2 years ago. No, it's binding until the conference votes again, 2/3 to do it differently. Edition of the big book underworks right now. The conference has voted to make a fifth tradition. You can't just say, oh, no conference action is binding upon another. No, this year's General Service Conference is the 75th General Service Conference. Creating a fifth tradition is binding on that conference unless they vote 2/3 to rescind it or do something different. But the self-correcting aspect of Alcoholics Anonymous is our beauty. Now, sometimes we take it too far, depending upon what version of alcoholic you are, because I'm guessing we still have some second edition members alive. We have a lot of third edition alive, a ton of fourth edition, and soon fifth edition. All those alcoholics are alive. If you particularly are a third edition alcoholic, you remember the great smoking debate. The great smoking debate almost destroyed Alcoholics Anonymous at one point. It happened between like 1988 and let's just call it 1995. You would sometimes go to a meeting that was smoking, and you didn't go to the last business meeting, and now it's non-smoking. And then all the smokers would get together at a diner after a meeting and say, we're all going to the next business meeting. And they would change it back to smoking. That's just the way it went. But we've changed our mind on a bunch of topics in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's healthy and good. But what I would tell you is the healthiest, and take it from someone who is strongly opinionated. One of the greatest spiritual exercises, AA service, is to help carry out a group conscience that you were opposed to. Not just take your toys and run to the diner and text all your sponsees and God knows what else we like to do. The better spiritual exercise is to say, I was against this picnic my group was going to have, but I'm going to join the committee. I'm going to go along with what the group. For me, my personal experience is that has taught me a lot. It's taught me about just being a member among members. It's a very painful, listen, I know the General Service Conference is coming up. I know we changed the preamble. I know we have a plain language big book. I don't think there's anything, it doesn't matter how I feel about any of that. But what I would tell you is it's a very lonely place to be when you believe you are the smartest person in Alcoholics Anonymous. And if they only listened to you, they would have voted a different way. And worse than that, it's a very painful place to be when you're so angry at the one place in the world that saved your life. It's just not a healthy, good place to be. And I would tell you to talk to anyone who's been in AA a long time, and they'll share honestly when they've probably been in that situation. It's a lot easier to believe the instructions, which are God is in charge. And God's will is shown through the group conscience. So I want to read concept 2. If you're changing books, I'll give you a second. Concept 2, when in 1955, the AA groups confirmed the permanent charter for their General Service Conference. They thereby delegated to the conference complete authority for the active maintenance of our world services, and thereby made the conference, except for any change in traditions 12, in the 12 traditions, or in Article 12 of the conference charter, the actual voice of our whole society. Common question is, why does it say 1955 when the first conference was in 1951? So that's because the first 4 conferences were a test. Actually, the first 5, 51, 52, 53, 54, and 55. After the 55th conference, the International Convention was in St. Louis, and the AA groups ratified the conference charter, and that the conference would be permanent going forward, and that its actions would be binding on the Board of Trustees. So concept 2 is about, if concept 1 says the groups are in charge, how do we carry out concept 2? There's a couple of strong sentences in concept 2 that I don't want to forget. It says the power of the groups and members to alter their world service structures and to criticize its operation is virtually supreme. Now, as someone who served as a trustee, you're never going to be criticized more than being a trustee. But that's because the groups have that power. It says it in the first paragraph. To criticize its operation is virtually supreme. The operation is really theirs. They really own it. From a legal point of view, which we'll get into in concept 7, the trustees are our owners, but the spiritual owners are the groups of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's who the spiritual owners of Alcoholics Anonymous is. Now, let's talk about what's going on right now, like practical, real deal concept 2. People tell me, I don't like my delegate. Okay. Or people tell me, our delegate's really not doing a good job. And then I ask them, was your delegate a good alternate delegate? No, he was horrible at that too. I'm like, well, I hate to break it to you, but if you're a bad alternate cookie coffee person at your group, you're not going to magically become a great coffee cookie person at your group. If you don't show up and are not prepared in the positions you had prior, what's going to make you different as a delegate? And so I just want to stress that every other year in your area, you elect a delegate, an alternate delegate, and other officers. Don't elect your friends. You might happen to elect your friends, but not because they were your friends. You elected them because you thought that she or him would be the best at it. Often, if you really want to be honest with yourself, this is my experience. There are some of my friends I probably should never elect a delegate. That's not their, it's not their gift. And there are some people that I don't agree with who make really good delegates. Like the importance of the election of a delegate, I cannot stress how important that is. The delegate is representing all the groups in your area at the once a year General Service Conference. Now, your delegate is going to get feedback. And again, we talked about this last week. There's 93 different areas in the United States and Canada. They all do it a different way with the same goal of getting an accurate cross-section feedback to go vote at the General Service Conference. But you don't get to go with them and make sure they voted the way you want them to vote. You're trusting that that person is going to do the best job, but here's the kicker. Not the best job for your area, and not the best job for your district or group. The delegate's job is to vote for what's best for Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. Now, delegates should be fully transparent. Sometimes people say, well, my delegate said I don't have to tell you how I voted. That is not how I read the conference charter. It is not how I read concept 3, right of decision. When we exercise the right of decision, we owe complete open reports. But I think that's the best learning lesson for an area. If a delegate comes back to the area and says, I know we really felt this way, but I heard some information shared at the conference, and it really caused me to think that what was best for Alcoholics Anonymous is me to vote this way. Now, I also hear people say all kinds of things about, I just hear so many things, and I just have never met a delegate or a past delegate where even if you went to your, however your area gets the information back through the districts at a mini conference, however you do it, I don't know any delegate who would never take the time to talk to a group member for 15 minutes and hear them out and see why they're so concerned about a particular issue. You know, as we talk about concept 2 tonight, let's talk about the largest group of people in AA, which unfortunately, I hate to let you all know how uncool you are. It's not the 122 people gathered together on a Monday night to talk about the traditions and concepts. See, there's a large group of people who don't have a GSR in their group, or who have a GSR and don't give that GSR time to properly report. Or they think, oh, whatever happens at the General Service Conference, that service stuff isn't important. Now, I would usually, or for a long time, say they have a right to believe that. But since I have many general service conferences now in a row behind me, I can tell you that every year, and I mean every year, somebody that I know that is a good member of AA calls me with the exact same phone call that I got the year before. And it always starts out with, you wouldn't believe what they did last week. Now, because I've been sober a long time, if it's an AA phone call, I would believe anything. So let's just say that. There is nothing I would not believe anymore. But when somebody calls me and says, you know what, out of the blue, they just changed the preamble. I'm like, I hate to tell you this, but we've been talking about it for a couple of years. Or you're not going to believe this. They're making a plain language big book. AA's ending probably within a couple of weeks. It's going to destroy AA. Like, well, I hate to tell you this, but we've been talking about that for a couple of years too. But I just want to stress to everyone who's in here that you will run into people like that. And that's in my opinion, the week after the General Service Conference is the greatest learning opportunity we have in Alcoholics Anonymous every year. The week after, when we get a passionate, very involved, but totally pissed off member because they just heard that their favorite pamphlet was changed, or we did something they don't like, or we're not going to say the Our Father at the next international convention. I could go on and on. There is no better learning opportunity to seize on regarding our structure than the week after the General Service Conference. Those are the people we need to make sure their group has a GSR. Now, I do want to say something here about the GSRs that elect the delegate. We don't have a problem electing GSRs in AA. We have a problem getting GSRs to their first assembly. Now, we have another problem. If the assembly is like so bad, they don't go back to their second. But we first got to get them there one time. And if the GSR who was just passed never went to an assembly, why would the new GSR go to an assembly? And one of the things I want to share, because I've learned this because it finally dawned on me like at year 24, when I was at my own home group selection, I finally realized we elect GSR like second to last at our election meeting. If GSR really is that important, shouldn't it be one of the first couple of positions we elect? Because the further we put it down the list, whether we say everything's the same or not, everybody thinks it's unimportant. We finally just elected the birthday cake person. We just elected the person who cleans up the parking lot of the cigarette butts. Hold on. We have one more, the GSR. We need to elect the GSR. So a way to empower your GSR is to move it up in the schedule, how you elect them. And the other thing I want to say about this time of the year is, how are you not going to be surprised about what happens at the General Service Conference if you don't give your GSR before the General Service Conference time to talk to the group about what's going on at the conference? And if you're a new GSR here tonight, I'm going to tell you that probably even in the most patient and tolerant group in the world, you don't have time to review 81 agenda items with them. You need to take a hard look at that list. Maybe ask your DCM or your delegate to help you. And really identify the ones that your group is really going to be interested in. The ones that you know that depending on how the vote goes, they're going to be all bent out of shape. Like, you got to find a way to at least talk about them. The General Service Conference, it's the 75th this year. 75 years of General Service Conferences. In a blink and an eye, we'll be at the 100th General Service Conference. The General Service Conference is what has kept AAAA, but only because the delegates make up 93 votes of the 135 or so votes at the General Service Conference. And we'll talk about that in Concept 4. So with that, I am going to go to some questions. If you have a question, please send it in. Let's see. What makes you believe that God's will is voiced through the informed group conscience? Well, that's a great question. I guess the first thing I would say about that is that I have to ask myself, how out of control is my ego if there's no need for a General Service Conference that I know better than everyone? So that's number one. I need to ask myself that question. But it took me a long time to believe in God, even use that word after I was comfortable using higher power. But for me, I've had to exit the debating society. Our principle says that God shows himself through our group conscience. And I've had to start to believe that that should be good enough for me. I don't need to come on day 3 and say, you know what, this AA thing's good. It's worked for 3 days, but I can make it a lot better, which is right in my natural ballpark, right? Yeah, I know you've been doing it this way for 50 years, but I have a good couple of ideas that'll be a lot better. And I've seen it work. And maybe you have to be here for a few years to witness the group conscience, to witness minority opinion, which we'll talk about in a couple of weeks. And also, what makes me believe in it is that it's not permanent. That, as Jim Estelle used to say, we're the greatest self-correcting society in the world. Maybe that's as informed as we could have been that day. And maybe in 2 years, we'll be more informed. Let's see. The wording in that first paragraph, to alter their world service structure, was this intended to today's world service outside of the US and Canada, or just for our structure? So by the time the concepts were written, there were other general service structures. At the time the charter was approved in 55, there were not. But each of the 63 autonomous general service structures uses the concepts. Is AA trying to do too much too quick, not allowing Tradition 2 to work its fullest strength? 81 proposed agenda items for the last 2 years. I don't want to talk about agenda items. I'm not sure what that means. listen, we can't forget one thing whenever we're doing something in AA. It involves alcoholics, which is usually a disaster from the start on many levels, right? All our alcoholic tendencies and personalities and egos. Yeah, listen, I won't talk about an agenda item this year, but I'll talk about things in general. And this is not only an AA problem, it's a problem that a lot of nonprofit organizations seem to have. We love to come up with something new to do before we finish what we're working on. Now, if you apply that to your life, I don't want to be the judger and jury of your life, but if I apply it to my life, it just seems to be very fit in the alcoholic mindset. Rather than finish the project I'm working on, let's start a new one. It just seems that we're very good at that. And so I don't know if that is what the question means, but I do know that when you look at the General Service Board, the AAWS board, the Grapevine board, and the conference, we do seem to always, we're right on to the next new ideas instead of making sure that we finish the projects we're working on. Oh, here's a good question. Have you found anything that works to make the sting feel less when you lose a vote on something you feel very strongly about? I think the honest answer to that would be the following. I have found a way to make it. Does it still sting sometimes? Yes. I think I've become better at the fact that it stings of having to make everybody else's life miserable. I think I've learned that just because I lost a vote or something I care about, do I need to let it dominate my head that I'm just going to get back my pound of flesh? That way it's gotten better for sure. The other way, and I just want to share some experience, is when something that I was not in favor of actually works out and turned out to be a good idea. Once you've been through that a few times, um, you accept God's will through the group conscience. Like, wow, the last time I was really against it, the group decided to do this. And you know what? It worked out really well. It was a good idea. So, um, but it's perfectly natural because we get all caught up in really being very attached to a particular thing. Why do we have short forms of the traditions and concepts? They often seem to sow more confusion than convenience, given the differences between the two formats. Yeah, um, we really wanted something to be in line with the steps, to be able to fit on a shade and um, to be less complicated. But yes, we have created some confusion for sure. When we get to concept 6, you'll hear me talk about it. The short form of concept 6 is a disaster. The long form of concept 6, the first thing it talks about is how the conference is the final authority. It left that out of the short form. But it would kind of be like saying, if you're familiar with the chapter, how it works in the big book, the 12 steps are laid out in that chapter. Would we tell somebody who's new, oh yeah, you're going to work the steps. Just read the 12 steps in that chapter. Don't start at the beginning of the big book. Don't even start at the beginning of that chapter. I mean, listen, there's lots of things we could debate in AA. Take it from someone. In today's world, based on the way I learn, I would have probably been called neurodivergent, the way that I particularly learn, the way that I read or remember certain tendencies that I have. I mean, I'm a guy that the first time I heard how it works, I'm like, wait a minute. It says there's three pertinent ideas, but then you applied letters to them, not a number. Who wrote this? Like there's three pertinent ideas, and then you have A, B, C instead of one, two, three. Like, what's going on? Like, it's just best regarding the debate between the short form of the concepts and the traditions to just be glad somebody is starting to read them and then share the long form with them and then take them through our literature to help them learn some more. But I admit they are a little short. I have heard that the short form of the traditions was intended for public consumption and not for members of AA. I do not know that to be true. I have heard that. I was told it was because Earl T in Chicago told Bill W that for the membership, he thought there should be a short form of the traditions, not for people outside. And Earl had a lot of influence in Alcoholics Anonymous. Chicago was kind of, we always talk about New York and Akron. But truthfully, the early power centers of Alcoholics Anonymous were New York and Chicago, if you read our history. Let me get to the next question. Could you tell me what you think this year are some of the most important agenda items? No, I cannot tell you that. Uh, Thank you for the question, but that goes in the category of none of my business. You should read through it. If you have a service sponsor, if you know your DCM, give your delegate a call. But I'm not comfortable with saying what I think is. I can tell you a game I play every year to make your AA life a little bit more enjoyable. I do go through the agenda and make a couple of notes about what am I going to get the phone calls on that people said they had no idea was going on. I play that game with myself, and I've become pretty good at that game. Like, I can pretty much guarantee the phone calls that are coming about things that there was some conspiracy to hide from the fellowship. That I've become very good at. But it's better that I mind my own business and not tell you what I think are the really important ones this year. Here's another great question. Have you ever seen a group conscience go one way and it turned out not to be a good idea? Yes, I have. I want to talk about unity versus unanimity. The greatest thing we have in Alcoholics Anonymous is diverse opinion. I'm even going to cheat and steal a line from the end of concept 4. Because sometimes I hear like, oh, the board, it really needs to be like, the board needs to be unanimous. Like they need to have unity. Unanimity is not unity in Alcoholics Anonymous service. What makes us have great group consciences is having diverse opinions where we reach a consensus in a group conscience. It actually says in concept 4, it says, it is also noteworthy that in practice, our trustees have never yet voted in a block. And then I love this sentence. It's the top paragraph on page 15, last page of concept 4, talking about the trustees. And I think you all remember last week, Scott and I talking about it. Scott and I probably agree 98% of the time. But the 2% we don't agree, we really don't agree. That's just as good as I could say that. But listen to what it says here. Their differences of opinion among themselves are nearly always as sharp and considerable as those to be found among the delegates themselves. That's what makes the Board of Trustees an effective unit. Different, diverse opinions. People who don't always agree with each other. There's nothing more dangerous in AA than when we all agree with each other. I can tell you this, of the group consciences that the question was, have I seen something and it didn't work out, even though the group voted to do it? More often than not, usually when it's close to a unanimous vote. Because then people didn't take the time. It was like a railroad. You know what group consciences always work out? The close vote. The differences of opinion. The ones where we actually have to have a vote. Because it's those differences of opinion that makes us great. It's just unfortunate that we're made up of alcoholics, and sometimes, like, our differences of opinion, we don't know how to verbalize that in a non-ugly fashion, in a respectable fashion. Let's see. We have time for one more question if someone wants to send one in. I will say this, if anybody wants the information on Jim Estelle's funeral, or where you can send a note or a card to his family, please email me and I will send that to you. That is really something that's on the top of my mind right now, because, you know, people in AA service, our loved ones and family, they give up a lot for us to serve. They give up a real lot. They sacrifice. And I was just talking to my friend Tom about this, who, by the way, is a trustee, and me and him agree on like nothing, right? So just so you know, like, you can have friends, but I can tell you one thing we do agree upon about AA service, and this is at the district, area, and US and Canada level. We do a very bad job at paying respects to people who pass away. We forget about them. We don't show up and say something to their family like, remember, you're talking about families that their person sacrificed time. Don't they want to hear from the people they sacrificed for? How maybe it meant something. And this has been on my mind lately with a couple of funerals I've been to, that we should do a better job paying respects. And I'm not, listen, it's just something I've noticed, and I've talked to some other people about it, and they've noticed. You take a person who's 30 years sober and passes away, they have a couple of kids, maybe their kids sacrificed, lost a little time with their parents because of AA service. Like, it would be nice if some of us showed up. And some people are sending in ideas. Thank you for those ideas. I'm going to send some into the general service office. I have a couple of ideas as well. of things we could do to better, remember people. So with that, I will all right, I'm gonna do this one more time. My email is going in there. If you want the information for Jim's family who are taking cards or notes, please email me and I will make sure that it gets to you. So with that, we will close with the responsibility statement. I'm responsible when anyone anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA always to be there. And for that, I am responsible. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.